This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. This is Nanette Bartow with another episode of Hit the Road, Jack, Finding the Zodiac. Last week, we left off actually talking about some of the solves with Harriette Sucher, and this week we're going to finish those up. We're first going to bring on Terry Batcher in regards to some information from last week's solves that we discussed, because he had some extremely interesting points that I thought were interesting to hear. So let's bring Terry on.
Hi.
Good morning. Hi
Morning.
there. So
Hi.
you had some interesting information in regards to NASA and the Northrop Grumman connection.
Right, they made the LEM. I think I got the acronyms right. That's the part that landed on the moon. And
what is LEM?
Well, it stands for Lunar Excursion Module, which means it leaves the command module, I believe, is how they work those acronyms. And like, for instance, in Apollo 11, it was Armstrong and I forget the other guy's name. I thought I drank a lot of coffee. I hope it was anyway.
Aldrin.
The two guys that landed
is it Aldrin? Right, Aldrin is
Aldrin,
it?
Right, Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah.
Landed on the moon in that thing, and it was made by Northrop Grumman. Well, Grumman anyway. It was. They said on the. I just saw this recently. I wouldn't have remembered it, but. That was the part that landed on the moon. There wasn't much to the thing, but it was an important piece, of course. But the computer was one of the key things, and tricky stuff to be able to get it back off the moon and made back up with the command module, which Collins was still in. But anyway, it stuck with me that Grumman made that particular part. NASA was pretty redundant. They made a lot of different things, so they had a backup and a fallback plan to do things, because it's a pretty sophisticated operation, and to get men safely there and back, so.
Correct. So that's what would have been taking the pictures that Harriette was talking about.
I'm not sure of the picture connection, but I'm just saying that when she was going through her information last time, it stuck with me that I think you came up with the word Grumman, but there was nothing said about it. Am I right about that? I don't remember.
I believe that she said it was involved with. Let's bring Harriette on, because I think that maybe something that she said might strike a memory in what it was that you thought about.
Right, exactly. And then I go off on another tangent. Hi.
I'm here.
All right.
Well,
so what was your take on Northrop Grumman?
Okay. Kennedy made I believe it was Northrop. They weren't connected at the time. But they were, and Northrop was building a whole bunch of things up until about 1962. He drops a whole bunch of contracts and very much PO'd people at Northrop and connected to Northrop. But Grumman was the one that was definitely building the module and a lot of other things for future Apollo. But that's where I believe it's Al Ibarra comes in, who's for the classified location of the Palmdale United Auto Workers, which I tried to look it up some more recently, but it's still kind of classified. I don't want to venture into a whole bunch of things, because it's United Auto Workers 887 that Al Ibarra was the chief CEO of at the time when they were building these things. And that's where Robert Abel comes in, and he's kind of mixed in with these people, and they got a really dirty, dark side. That's what I was finding. But as far as the Apollo missions, that's what Yeah, you're definitely correct about they were building the module.
Okay, and then so Terry brought up the interesting part about the onboard navigational computer because of the storage and things of that nature.
Right. Well, what that had to do with in those days, memory, which is used in computers, well, it always has been kind of precious, but just so we can make it, differently these days. That was in the early days of a shrinking down a big machine that took up a lot of space on the ground, and making it into something they can as a backup, as a navigation device and other things. And to save on memory, they use the terms, they give them two hot buttons or two buttons on the control panel that were noun and verb, which caught my interest. So it simplified what they had to do to write code for the thing to make the computer work right. And of course, if you're kind of a fanatic of the stuff, I don't always remember all of it. When they went to land the thing gave them an error code. So what's his name? Neil Armstrong didn't sweat that. He landed the thing himself because he had to jump it over rocks and things like, to get it, find a safe landing place. But that computer was quite marvelous for the day. And it, if you were in the era that was pre-Windows and such, if you had a PC, you had to have you had to know all the command lines and the code yourself to write in there to prompt a file or find something or get something to happen on the computer.
Let me say real quick and interject that Jack actually knew how to write code, because we've got documentation and writings from him where he was doing the control codes or whatever it is that he was doing for the computer, that control line like you're talking about.
Yeah, right. He knew
that makes sense.
Now you'd also talked about the noun verb association and how that related to the statements that we keep seeing him say, like go catch, hurry up, go slow, those kind of things.
Right.
Correct?
Those sort of codes similar to that or that same idea or concept were used in early still used in computer science, except they've advanced the strength of those words, as they make computer code a little more sophisticated and can do more things. But you had simple concepts like go sub, go to, print, and things like that you had for command lines in a very simple, and the term is basic, because a lot of things spring from basic in computer science. So you had that. There also, what was working in my mind at the time was this noun thing. We know that Jack used on all of the picture postcards from the Zodiac era, he used the noun Jack was included in all of those. The jackrabbit in the snow, you name it, there was a Jack there. And no one's ever caught on to that until it dawned on me that what can we say that's, I was looking for, hints in the
jack-o'-lantern.
And found that all of those were a Jack noun, and that he put a Jack wherever he could, And
I think that it's not that they haven't found it; they want to ignore it. I think when we listen to some of these audio tapes from law enforcement, we'll see just how much they want to ignore Jack. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right about that. Absolutely. I did notice that too. Of course, that makes it a little more difficult for the person that's coming up on trying to learn all this stuff or trying to speed themselves up on what was this Zodiac thing about? That was my starting point. What was that all about that happened? I was a kid when that happened and really ignored it. I didn't know anything about it and didn't hear about it periodically over the years. And of course, from there, I slid into the vortex.
All right. Let's take a look at some of those other solves, Harriette. I think we left off after the Monterey Pop Festival, which you indicated actually occurred in when? 1967 or 1968?
Oh, 1967. June-ish, July-ish, 1967.
So then technically this letter is still correct in the sense if it's mailed November 1st of 1967, that has already happened.
Yeah. It looks like she had been quietly rumored to be signed, that she was going to be signed by Columbia, and there was the official signing by Columbia Records, which is a part of, I believe, at the time connected to Columbia Broadcasting. I mean, still, so there's a big deal there. I mean, Jack is picking up on all of this. So she gets officially signed that following March 1968, I believe.
And
but they saw her cream everybody at the Monterey Pops. So you can imagine the record execs that were kind of, scoping out the field there, said, "Hey, there's our star. Okay, let's get her."
Sure, big money, like big money. That plays out across that whole spectrum of entertainment.
But what do you think? Do you think it's possible? Because I'm thinking Jack attended that Monterey Pops Festival because he was doing his thing, working, trying to locate something on Marjorie Alette. So he calls her the zit face. Yeah.
He refers to Santa Cruz, at least in one of these maps. He refers to Santa Cruz, which we know is just a hop, skip, and a jump from Monterey. So maybe that's just to partly get us there, but not all the way. So the zit face singer is then, of course, Janis Joplin.
Yeah, he's not a fan of hers at that moment. He's heard, that's what I'm configuring and guessing, that he heard about her, and she was, walking around with no shoes, even at Texas. But then, so he goes there, and he's calling her the zit-faced shoeless singer. But I think he attended it, and then he became a fan slowly right after that. I mean, who didn't?
Could that have been where he believed the underneath the stickers and stamps you were saying where the PA system went was to the Monterey?
He's trying to find them. I think that's what looks like. They're trying to find them and get a chance to grab them. And I don't know exactly what's really going on. It's kind of bizarre during that time period. Everybody's on drugs. I was a kid, but they're on all kinds of things. And I think he was just trying to trail her friends, and he's finding out that she's just an innocent bystander, in between Abel and the creeps in NASA, and
her girlfriend Marjorie Alette, she's between her too, right?
Yeah, she's and I understand because that Janis Joplin was a fan of Bobby Kennedy, was a fan of civil rights. So, I think Jack was finding out that was true. That's why she also was called a whole bunch of other things. The N-word that we couldn't say, still can't say. They get mad if you do that. But so because she rather sing with the very talented Black people of Texas, and that gave her a really bad time for people at her university where she went. That's why she was pretty brutally beat up. But she said, I think she basically said, I'd rather sing with the talented Black people than the untalented white folks like Pat Boone.
Oh boy.
So
all right. Well, I think we kind of covered MoonQuest friend Abel. We now know that Abel is Janis Joplin's friend, and you believe that at another point in time during these crimes that we're going to talk about, that he's actually responsible for some of those murders. So the Syracuse Draft Board, now the message just says to the Syracuse Draft Board. What was to the Syracuse Draft Board?
You mean the message itself?
Well, I think the message itself just said to the Syracuse Draft Board. I'm not sure if that indicated what was going to them.
I think he was dropping big hints that the guy that was there, let me find his name again, Henry Lambright.
Yes.
W. Henry Lambright. I think he was dropping big hints that this guy was involved at NASA and the planning and all kinds of future missions, and that it's somehow connected to what's going to happen with the trickery in regards to taking the picture, the color picture that that Lang and his crew, they've helped do some trickery to make it look like it was taken at a certain time, but it was actually taken a nice color picture in January 1968. And that has to do with the future, the design of what they wanted to have happening at that time period. And that's where the Brookings Institute, I think, comes in. That's Mr. Lambright, and he worked for he was at Syracuse University.
Ah.
So that's where. Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
We got a delay here.
I felt like that was there a little bit. Yes. Now, we did see also that you said Robert Kennedy, William Shakespeare quote, "Think of Kennedy." Was that, I wasn't sure how to interpret that. I mean, because you're saying Shakespeare, is that just a...
That's his, when he does his speech, and apparently all the Democrat Party and a lot of people were expecting in 1964 that Robert Kennedy was going to be the running mate for LBJ, but LBJ historically didn't like these people. So knowing LBJ, he said, go bleep yourselves. So anyways, right. That's when Robert Kennedy is making his speech. He's making a quote based. I mean, his statement is based on a quote from William Shakespeare from about several centuries ago. And it means, when I die, I think I have it here, but it's basically saying that when I die, please, cut me up into 1,000,000 pieces and throw my parts of me up into the sky. And when people look up to the sky, they'll be honoring me rather than the garish sun, So,
gotcha.
And so he's saying that that's his brother Kennedy, that JFK is up there in the sky somewhere, and he's as bright as the sun, but he's
and
a
that's
star.
the wishing on a star is I did.
Yeah, Jack is wishing. Yeah, that's so many people are wishing on a star that this happens. That Bobby Kennedy ends up in the White House, and MLK sitting there with him while they're watching the finality of the dream of landing a human on the moon. So.
What was that you were saying there, Terry?
Well, just that, he cut me up into 1,000,000 pieces, that Jack would gravitate to that,
Yes, he would.
Part of the Shakespeare quote, against the starry sky. It's, he's flipping there's the inverted cross and everything right there. I mean, that had to appeal the mentality of Jack, I would say.
So then you went on to say Dr. MLK brother. What did that...
I know that they considered MLK at the time to be, like family, but but he's also referring to they loved him like a brother. So, and that really made at the time a lot of people, especially in the South, very angry because there was just so much conflict going on.
Racism.
But he's also saying that he's hoping that. That the brother of JFK is in the White House sitting next to MLK, who's like a brother to them.
Oh, so that's what Jack is making a message to Nixon. To who about?
Yeah,
to Nixon.
Well, no, he was actually hoping before the Bobby Kennedy gets killed that the brother. Well, he was hoping that was going to happen, but it didn't happen. So.
Who is together? That's where you wrote who is together at the Oval Office, and that's what you're meaning by.
Yeah, he was hoping that it was going to be Bobby Kennedy and MLK, just wishing on a star, like on JFK, the bright star in the heavens, that this was going to happen. But
you're saying they were already right. Yeah, you're saying they were already deceased at this point, and so this letter is now going to Richard Nixon, who is voted president-elect.
Yeah, he's very, I can tell by the way it's phrased because I saw a lot of dots in there. And then I said, oh yeah, if you're typing and you're like depressed and sad and you're pausing, it's going to be a statement, ... which is pause, another statement, ... And, he's saying, hi, Richard, you're voted the president-elect, Washington. Letter by JWT ... with Monterey Pops Festival, Zit Face, Hit Singer, Moon Quest friend, Abel, pause, to the Syracuse Draft Board, pause, H. Lambright, Robert Kennedy, William Shakespeare quote, think of Kennedy wishing on a star, Martin Luther King, brother, together at the Oval Office. He's pausing a lot. And then he's saying, while Apollo, the mission happens in 1969. And then he says that he was hoping that the Cold War nation would shake their fists, etc. That would be true, but shit, UPI there to report solemnly, holy, both holier clout, true obit throughout the year.
So that's what I wanted to find out about lastly was both holier clout. What is that?
He's saying that they are both holier than so many people that are in politics. That's what I'm believing. And even Nixon, he's saying they're holier than you. So
the news?
Yeah, so he's really giving them what a lot of people did perceive at the time, that these were doing good. The Kennedys were, especially Bobby Kennedy, was really fighting for truth, justice, and, civil rights, and, that people, because in San Francisco, we could do that. We were kids, you could sit right next to your person that was black, and have, a party at Golden Gate Park. But in the South and many parts of the country, you could not. So he was fighting for things like that.
Okay.
But
Okay. That makes sense.
I was going to interject on it. Notice that Jack, and of course, what she was just saying, he put a time date stamp. Pardon me. What he was saying by putting it, in that time frame from the Apollo mission, that era, there's a time date statement on the anagram or the stuff that Harriette just recited there. And you'll see that a lot with Jack, is that he had to have that time dates wherever he could. He put a time date on things, especially later on. He did it, I think, early on too. But you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
There's a time date message there, time date stamp, if you will. So yeah,
okay.
It's just a little.
That makes sense.
Well,
let's
something to look for is a time date stamp on his work. It's there on a lot of it,
Let's get back to the presentation then. At this point, I'm going to introduce some information. And as we go along, if you guys want to chime in or if there's anything you'd like to add, please let me know. I did actually come across it during some of my research, an article by an individual who was very upset with the media and the way they were portraying this particular case. In fact, a lot of the things that he was talking about was the sensationalization of things that were not true versus things that were true. He gave some points in regards to things that he believed the media jumped the gun and literally gave the Zodiac credit for, to kind of instill fear, hype up the news, get more papers sold. It seemed that the media to him was more interested in money and making money off of these news stories than they were about actually delivering the correct news and solving it. And I think a lot of people feel that way. So basically, this comes from Mike Butterfield. He had written an article on it, and a couple of his key statements that I pulled out is that he said Zodiac made fear profitable. And I think just the opposite. They made the Zodiac profitable.
Yeah, Hearst,
right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the media gave him that name. He didn't adopt that name on his own, as far as I can tell, correct?
But he played along. He went with it, though, with the Hartnell thing.
The media gave it to him, and Jack was one of the decodings that I did from about 1967-ish, 1968, 68 when he's elected. The media is going to label him Zodiac, and there's going to be future cold cases coming up, and it's going to be run through. It's under Hearst, but it's going to be run through the AP. So yeah, they did make it profitable, but in my view, after doing so many of these, even though they were making it and sensationalizing it big time, they were after getting Hoffa and Giancana and anybody associated to them. So that was a grand smokescreen. While people were looking over here, they were sneaking, and Jack and his crew were getting ready to kill Darlene Ferrin and Paul Stein. Nobody was looking here. They were looking off at the grand scheme of things.
Absolutely.
So I think
yes, and that takes me on to the next statement that the Zodiac invited the press to exploit his crimes. When again, I see that the press is actually ones who exploited his crimes. I've always said that the Zodiac didn't write because he killed. He killed so he could write. Period. He had a message that he needed to get across. He had an agenda. He had something that he was doing. He was not simply on some random spree, just willy-nilly killing people. You don't wake up one day, do this to 7 people, write an enormous amount of letters over almost a 30, 40-year time frame, and then fall off the face of the earth again. It just doesn't happen. So he also goes on to say that the San Francisco Examiner even offered the Zodiac the opportunity to tell his own story exclusively. I'm sure that sold papers.
Well, he was.
Yes, he was.
Quietly.
Yes, he was.
So it was like, hint, 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 Jack, what else are you doing right now? We need to, kind of know what's going to come up. So
right. Well, my main point in this gentleman's article that he wrote, which the URL is at the top of the presentation, if anybody wants to take a look at that. He said so he used a double hyphen just like newspapers, and I question anybody who does anything just like a newspaper. And it was owned by Hearst, which obviously is another clue. The messages that he actually used to prove that there were errors, he made an error in himself. And that is where he comments and states that it was impossible for the Zodiac to have been responsible for the killing of Sergeant Raditich in June 26, 1970. But what I want to show everybody is when you're looking at the information on the internet is that the FOIA file shows that this man died on the 19th. So Butterfield is calling out the news, saying that the news purposely tied this together with no information and no ability in the time frame from when Raditich was killed until the actual release of the newspaper stating that the Zodiac had killed him. When I, in fact, find that Raditich died on 6/19, that would have been adequate time by June 26th to have what caliber killed him, how the circumstance went down. And so that I want people to know that we make mistakes not because we want to or because we're being malicious. It occurs because there's so much information in these cases. And sometimes that information gets misstated or mistyped or transposed or things of that nature. I just wanted to point out that Butterfield himself, who's blasting everybody for errors and omissions, has made one a horrible one at this point, because as I go down the list and the possibility of the Zodiac being involved with a 38 is that we see that not only Raditich, on June 19th, we have Tibbetts was shot with a 38 sitting in his car at the JFK 1963. We have Stuart Mayer, in 1968, a chief tax consultant for Western Pacific Railroad, who's killed with a 38 in San Francisco. We have Paul Stein sitting in his car, killed with a 38. We have Charles Jarman just to the south, actually a day before this is printed in the newspaper, that he's killed somebody with a 38. Another taxi cab driver is killed the day before that. And then we have the taxi cab driver, Larry Hargis. We have many people that were shot with a 35 or 38 caliber weapon during this time frame. And any one of those could have been who he meant.
Question.
I think it was Charles Jarman. Because I remember early on Dennis's message board, we were able to bring up the Charles Jarman. I think it was a couple of articles that I had copied and brought them up here where I live with me. But
well, I don't necessarily want to climb into Charles Jarman at this point because I need to keep moving into other stuff. I just wanted to quote that, and Charles Jarman is the one that had laundry folded up.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. You're reading my mind.
Go ahead. All right, Terry.
Jack was working as a linen guy then.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And that's what I'm saying. I don't want to spend a lot of time climbing into those right now.
One quick question I want to ask is, when was The Zodiac Machine by Michael Butterfield written?
I don't know when it was written, but it's definitely I want to say I might have picked it up off of Tom Voigt's board back in 2000, somewhere between 2001 and 2005, I'm guessing.
I have one little minor observation to make, and it's a simple one. It's simplistic, but those things can count in all this. We were just talking about Janis Joplin, and in those days, during that era, there was a one famous performer. I think he's from California. His name was Paul Butterfield Blues Band, and that person would have probably been known to Janis Joplin. And it's interesting that this would have been, that now we see a Michael Butterfield.
I see him.
Somebody maybe have liked that Butterfield name. I don't know. I'm just. But this is an interesting observation that he makes, and I generally agree with it. Don't the rest of you? Don't the two of you agree with that?
I agree. I agree that the media is absolutely taking full reins on what's going on with the Zodiac and all these cases, and if not completely complicit with what's going on, assisting him in getting his messages back and forth, sending messages to him, doing. Yeah, same page. I also had to point out, though, that Butterfield made his own clerical error in naming the date incorrectly, and he didn't have any ill intent to do it. It just happened. And even if this Ratatich guy wasn't the person that Jack shot with the 38 sitting in the car, we have 5 or 6 other people, could have been any one of those that he was referring to. So we'll get to those. Ratatich?
I just want to interject that when you get up to D.B. Cooper, there's another Ratatich name involved in that, but that's for the future.
Well, here's another interesting thing that Jack kept, which I have up here to the left on the board, is his sale of his 38 caliber Smith & Wesson. So when they say that, that's one of the things Butterfield said, Zodiac never used a 38, it couldn't have been him. Who's to say what Zodiac used and didn't? I mean, come on, this man said, I'm not going to tell you who I killed. He said, it's a different MO every time. So, So going back to some more of those media ones is that I found, and I want to say, I think this was actually you I put up here, Terry. Once again, it said, I'm still reviewing OCCK files. I'm very certain Zodiac Jack Terrence was involved and that he was the actual killer. It takes a certain kind of person to coldly, cleverly, and casually pull off the OCCK murders, as well as the fact that he took a repeated number of very obvious risks. He said, I said it before that I see the military-like overtones and evidence of the murder, and the same goes for the subsequent Ramsey murder, as well as all of his previous murders. The monopolized mainstream media is complicit in these crimes. That I'm very certain of. So yes, you absolutely do agree with us.
I have one thing that I could definitely make, because I did one of them that stood out for the Oakland child killings. They're in Michigan, right? If I remember correctly.
Correct.
But one of them was last name Stebbins, and I was able to trace pretty good that was the son of Stebbins that was working for Nixon. And it looks like Stebbins kind of did
Okay. Yeah, we'll get to that one.
Really quick, that was a reason, a sad reason why the kid ended up buying the farm, because he betrayed something. He did something wrong.
Okay. So Another thing that I found in the media is when they place blame on a suspect without any reasoning to do so, they literally will put up a headline like we see here: arrest made in Corvette Concepts 1983 triple homicide. 3 murder charges were accepted by the Galveston County District Attorney's Office, each carrying a $50,000 bond. The triple homicide occurred in League City in 1983 at a business named Corvette Concepts. Now, we see that in the Tim Miller letter, this killer is taking credit for the Corvette Concepts fiasco, or at least has information in regards to it.
He's got some information. Mm-hmm.
Right. So the news is coming out and telling everybody in 2016 that they've arrested Jesse Dean Kirsch, but there is not one lick of information that follows that to say whether he was convicted, whether they were capable of making a case against him, that he was released. They say nothing. So they literally come out and they blast these great big huge headlines that there's another person responsible. And sometimes it's an official agency. Sometimes it's people calling themselves detectives and law enforcement, making themselves sound credible when they make these statements. But the bottom line is they blast it huge, and then when they take it back, you're almost never able to even find the information where they take it back.
Mm-hmm.
The significance of the Sherry Jo Bates confession letter is typed on teletype paper. This I found to be extremely interesting because it'd be my opinion that that's something Jack was familiar with and that he probably had that at the time. This typewritten communication is used in conjunction with carbon papers, they said. They indicated that the original was not mailed, but that a second to third or more generation of it was sent. And that would mean that at least 3 pieces of teletype paper, just to get 3 copies, if the original wasn't sent in, and we know 2 were sent into the media, into the police department, it would take 3 pieces of teletype paper and 2 pieces of carbon inside of a teletype machine in order to accomplish that. One of the things that they said about this is that U.S. military used this radio teletype in the 1930s and expanded this usage during World War II. And the Navy called radio teletype RAT, R-A-T-T, or radio automatic teletype. So it was being used by the Navy. Jack had access to all of this equipment at one time or another in his career, and would be familiar with it. And I also noticed that they also said that ham radio operators actually used the teletype to warn the Weather Bureau of impending storms that were coming in. They kind of pass it like a little chain gang across the countries in the world to let everybody know what was happening real time.
Yep.
So
a little bit about that,
right?
Right.
What you've dealt with those, or you've seen them, Terry?
Well, I haven't. When I had a repair shop up in the Bryn Mawr neighborhood of Minneapolis here some years ago, there was a guy that was a ham operator, and some other guy from the phone company gave me a bunch of teletype machines. I think I had about 5 or 6 of them in the shop there. I was actually one of the carts from them. The machines are big and heavy, and I knew they worked, the way you were talking about, and how early they've been using. Anyway, this ham operator was kind of a character. He wanted all those machines, and I scrapped out one. I took they were marvelously built. But anyway, he wanted one of them. He was like thrilled to get those teletype. He said, "Oh, if there's ever a big conflagration, this will be the only way you can communicate because all this other stuff isn't going to work, blah, blah, blah." Doomsday prepper. We're talking, this is 35 years ago that this happened.
Right, right.
So that's all I know about that. But he was a ham operator and was steeped in all that. And he loved to have those teletype machines, I recall. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me get back to the letter because I've only got a limited amount of time. So basically, as I was going over this letter, I noticed the way that it was folded. And you can see my arrows on here. The green ones are the folds that come lengthwise, which come first. And you can see that by the way the indentations run down the actual paper that indicates the lengthwise or the widthwise folds were completed first. Then the lengthwise fold was folded afterwards. And then when I went in and I started to look at some of Jack's paperwork, now this one has an extra fold, which is indicated by the blue line. But what I noticed is that he does a 4-part fold across the width,
military
with
style.
One right down the center. I didn't know that. Right down the center. Now, this teletype piece of paper was not exactly a 11.5-inch piece of, or an 8.5 by 11. It was not 11-inch piece of paper. So we are missing a couple inches on these sides. And I believe that if it was a full 11 inches, we would have seen all 4 folds in it. And then to further that, I actually, while I was looking through some of the old letters to see if I could find others that had folds, I came across the Gladys Kern letter from the Black Dahlia era, and I found that once again we had the four-way widthwise with one straight down the center. So I know that they said they could tell the difference between a copycat and the Zodiac case because they would not fold the paper the same way that the Zodiac did. And that would always clue them into when somebody was attempting to manipulate or pretend they were the Zodiac. And so, copycat.
Wow.
So I very
a lot of copycats are in the top secret military stuff. That's my view. Okay, because I'm seeing this, and the reason why I said that, I think my father, who was very military, he was a merchant marine, but he was also Navy Reserve. He would fold his papers like that. He gave me something that was out of his wallet. That was something that I had since I did when I was a kid, and was folded like this. So very military.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense, but I just wanted to throw that out there that even the way the paper is folded is consistent with what we're seeing in these crime letters. Right?
Right.
So the FOIA files indicated that the teletype was being sent by law enforcement agencies, and I've only read on the internet in research that the teletype was only being used by the military, which I now have throughout the FOIA files been able to show that all agencies are actually using this teletype machine. Dallas office is using it. The FBI is using it. When I get it over here and I just ran teletype through Google, look at Associated Press right there. They're using it. So I know that Stephen Dewhurst writes that he seemed to still have the school bus, but there's no record of a fixed address from 1967 and 1970. This could very well have been a machine that Jack was just traveling around with, and we've seen several typewritten letters throughout these sprees. My records from Doris shows that during this time frame, 66 to 67, that Jack was in the Santa Clara area and until 1968 when he moved to Nyack with her. And then after he separated from her, he was back in San Jose. And I was kind of under the impression that the bus thing was between the 68 through 71 time frame. But we know that he eventually moved in with Dennis's mother in South Lake Tahoe. And we do see the car that he owns, which is a similar description to the Zodiac case, right?
All the trail.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good work.
Yeah, so I think that, and we see up here his general ham radio license that coincides with what they're talking about, where it's included and used in newspaper information, weather information, etc. The Tahoe card was created to simulate holes in teletype printer, which is something I didn't know about. Harriet, did you know that?
Back in my mind, yes, but you're reminding me of what I'm just recently worked on, and the Get Carter letter has those teletype holes that you're just drawing my mind right now.
Okay,
you'll see it's a lengthwise paper with two little holes at the top. That's teletype paper.
I thought when I was reading up on it, they were indicating it was holes that they could like literally read the tape with just the holes. Like the holes indicated where it was punched out, which letter it was. But so
I guess all I know is you're like mentioning that, and I'm envisioning in my head what I just seen yesterday.
Right.
and yeah, so you can see the two little holes at the top.
Well, and so this individual actually said, I think the paper is likely to be a very important clue, and I believe he's correct. I believe that the teletype leads us back to those that are in charge, because back in the 1960s, your average public did not have that.
Right.
So basically, I moved on at that point to kind of discuss one of the letters that was sent from the newspaper to the Zodiac killer, because this is the first time I had a feeling that they were also communicating back with Jack. Now, I know that there's been talks about putting ads in the newspaper or using the newspapers for criminals using it to get messages back and forth to each other. The FBI looked at Playboy magazines for articles thinking that the criminals were sending messages back and forth between that. So it's not offbeat or crazy to think that they would also be communicating back with him. And I found this particular message, which I want to note that every place that I put a double hyphen, that double hyphen is actually done by the newspaper in this article. And it raised, like you said, Harriet, it raised my my feelers on the fact that the Georgette Bauerdorf letter was typed exactly like that, with double hyphens to state a new statement.
Okay.
But this one said, what's that?
I wish I could read that document on the far left there.
It's in the big bold right here. So the message for the Zodiac Killer, message to the Zodiac Killer. Many people today are being hunted. You are not alone. The people who would judge you are themselves murderers. In fact, our nation was founded upon the murder of a race of a child like men. It would be foolish for you to believe anything the Examiner or its police informants tell you. You are unsafe with them as you would be with a rifle in your hands somewhere in Vietnam. If you have killed, I don't find you guilty. I like the fact that they say they don't find him guilty when we see a lot of letters where he says he feels guilty. As the Examiner, and police already have, then stop. But for God's sakes, another Jack reference, if you still feel a need to take human life, why didn't you join the U.S. Army, who were permitted to murder? Or why didn't you join the San Francisco Tactical Squad, who have been granted the right to kill anyone with black skin or long hair with impunity? Zodiac, they say you are white, a genius, and 40 years old. If these people are hating him for killing their friends and family and loved one, I don't know why they're complimenting. A drawing issued by the San Francisco Police Department shows you look very much like the very middle class that now wants your blood. Before you give yourself up, again, like as if he's going to give himself up. Who's saying this to who? Whatever you've done, think clearly about some of the true murders your peers have indulged in this past year. And it goes on to list a few of those murders that have occurred. Again, I'm showing you guys here the Bauerdorf letter where the double hyphenation is done to actually separate out their statements and their next thoughts. But let's see here. He talks about they talk about a cop being killed, a policeman killing a cop. They talk about people being or have not yet appeared in the Examiner, so that the Examiner's not reporting on any of these murders like they're reporting on the Zodiacs.
Right.
Hold on.
Yeah, selective journalism, 101, right?
Right.
Yep. Well, that's playing out right now in our beloved country all the time. They're not telling us all that's going on. There's matter of fact, a lot of it they're not telling us. I can tell you. I can say lying by omission.
So let me finish up this letter real quick, and then we'll talk about that. So so they go on to say the San Francisco Examiner tells you we offer you no protection and no sympathy. Of course not. This same Neanderthal paper then asks, why have you killed? How has life wronged you? The Examiner, and then I couldn't make out the word, I want to say dear, mixed up Zodiac, couldn't possibly tell who sent Castro into exile. Why are they bringing up Castro with Jack? Yeah. And Zodiac, if you're intelligent, then let's also hope that you are imaginative. You will find more help from our or one pages of, and I couldn't read that word, for he knew all about crime and punishment, murder and justice, than the yellow sheets of the Examiner. You must judge yourself, Zodiac, and act accordingly. Why not go into exile? Become a pilgrim, cast your weapons into the sea, and burn your past to oblivion. Burn your past to your oblivion. We have already heard multiple times in regards to these people, whenever they don't want any of their information to be known, they tell the party to burn it. Burn it. Grow a beard. They're telling him to, they tell him to grow a beard, and that's in fact exactly what he did when he moved to South Lake Tahoe. Leave this violent land and go somewhere hate and war and violence is not capitalized by the moneymakers. Take God and pray, Zodiac, for in the end, only the God man, now, dear draft board letters, God man, God like all these statements are the same, will judge you, not the little minds that now have power to write foolish messages and consult astrologers and program their IBM computers in hopes to lay hands upon you. I thought you'd like that, Terry.
Now you're going to give some validity to these people that think this Blaine guy is connected to that he's part of the Zodiac stuff. But maybe he is. He seems to be dropping some hints. Sorry, Terry.
So your key. That's right. Your key point then is that this communication is is something that's that Jack would have known all about. In other words, it's a communication where one person, the one sending it, is on the same page as the one receiving it, right?
That's kind of how it feels. I mean, who tells you before you turn yourself in, as if in don't do it, and to go run off and make a disguise and get lost in some never land. Yeah. I mean, that doesn't sound like a bloodthirsty member of the public who wants him to stop killing people.
Right.
Yellow sheets. It's, I think, referring to yellow journalists, yellow journalism.
Right.
Yeah. The sensationalizing of it all. So
they're absolutely calling out the Examiner all throughout this for that type of thing. They're willing to print, promote, and make money off of his murder and sadness, which is also what the SLA was indicating. They were very upset with the newspaper for glorifying murders of Black people and of hippies and of other people that society deemed less than worthy. So I thought that was an interesting take on possibly some communications going back and forth between him. We know he was reading the newspapers. We know that he asked for people to respond through the newspaper so he could get his message, i.e. the OCCK case, right, Terry?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to ask you about this. I'm noticing here it says something about pages of D's and where that and become a P.
Okay, it's because I can't read the word.
Oh, okay. Well,
it's time. It's time, you guys.
Pique my interest as a key.
Okay. I know it's time right now. I will try to see if I can figure that word out, but I couldn't. Everybody have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you guys for being on today.
That was
very good.
That was the shortest hour I ever spent. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. It goes fast.
It might be pages of Democrats. Pages of Democrats.
Both of you both do terrific work. I really enjoy it.
All right, you guys. Take care.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Oh,